my name's Jen Murphy. I just put out my first self-published book of essays, recycled and reused. I understand that some people don't enjoy reading that much, so I'm going to read it to you, one chapter at a time now. There's a total of 48 essays in here, so I'll make one video with each chapter. So I hope you enjoy it and that you'll end up watching all 48. Or you can get the book and read if you feel so inspired, but more entertaining for me to read it to you. The first chapter is My Life in the Background. Since the very first invention of film and television, countless numbers of human beings have sat themselves down in front of a compelling screen to view the upcoming entertainment. Maybe because it stars your favorite actor or actress, or simply just that it was a highly recommended within the workplace or form of an acquaintance or family member. Some of these sentences don't make sense. Okay. Did that make sense? Next time you sit down to gaze your eyes upon this all-encompassing form of visual pleasure, take a few moments to view it in an alternative way. Our main focus naturally always falls on the stars of the show, as is intended, of course. Whether that hero is playing out an intense scene at a restaurant, walking down a busy street, or perhaps just meandering on a crowded bus or airplane. The next time you log on to your favorite streaming service, just for a few moments, divert your eyes just an inch to the left or the right and notice the seemingly unrecognizable common person sitting behind them. That's me. Or one of another of the hundreds of performers in Los Angeles who do background work. We are the backdrop to their Emmy, possibly Oscar-winning dialogue. It's not considered a glamorous job in LA, although for some who just arrived in Hollywood, being just inches away from the likeness of a Jen Aniston or Walter White is the most glamour they've experienced in their lives thus far. Even the title insinuates that we are not people, but literal background, like a painting or a flower pot that is placed on a table to make the walls look less bare. But in those tiny moments when the camera is rolling, we do feel a sense of worth and importance. I can only speak for myself. Of course, that quickly goes away when we are sent to pee in a porta potty while the main actor resides in their personal trailer. I have on several occasions left a 15-hour day of background work completely dehydrated from refusing water for the sole reason of not wanting to have to step foot in a portable pee pot that's been continuously used by 65 other background extras in the past 12 hours, most of whom I witnessed engaging in way too much of the free catered lunch, knowing they had no food waiting for them in their own fridge. But hey, let's not focus on the negative. Doing background work is a way that aspiring actors in Los Angeles get to work just inches or feet from the biggest television and movie stars without booking an actual acting job. Don't get me wrong, there is acting involved. It's not easy to have a full conversation with another background actor, typically a stranger you just met on the set that day, without verbally being able to talk. Everything is done in silence so as not to disturb the voice of the stars. We are skilled mimes without the painted face. For the majority of background jobs, we arrive before the sun comes up, most often to a large parking lot or enclosed studio lot garage that is called the holding area, usually filled with folding chairs and long picnic tables. That metal chair becomes our home base for the day. We eat, sleep, read, contemplate our life decisions, and on some lucky days, forge new friendships with our fellow comrades devoted to this relentless lifestyle. Free food is by far a large perk for a lot of background actors. Large budget productions spare no expense on a huge spread of delicacies for their employees. There are more line cooks at Sony Studios than you'd see at any 4-star restaurant in Beverly Hills. And you can for sure find the leftovers of this delicious cuisine tucked nicely in the oversized backpack of your typical background actor. Making $18 an hour, the free food is definitely one of the motivators that gets us up at 4 a.m. Whereas most people in this line of work are aspiring actors, I am first and foremost a stand-up comedian. But we are all cargo in the same ship, just trying to get to our destination. I was making pretty good money as a comedian for a while, which is not always easy to do in LA, if you aren't famous or a regular on the Joe Rogan podcast. No diss. I absolutely love Joe Rogan. I began doing extra work after being fired from a cruise ship because I got COVID and spent the whole trip locked in the basement, and then wrote a great article about it for the LA Times. Needless to say, Carnival Cruise Line was not happy with my decision to exploit the details of my lockdown quarantine. It is not easy to make a living as a stand-up comedian while also paying $1,700 a month for a studio apartment in a city so neatly tucked midway between the hills and the ocean. The cruise ships pay very well. I wish I could say I regret burning that bridge, but I don't. My last article being published in the LA Times was a true highlight of my life, but I do miss the free vacations that came along with it. Suddenly finding myself in a fear-stricken panic of how I was going to keep this convenient but quite expensive little studio apartment roof over my head, I had to quickly find an alternative job I was skilled to do. I'm a stand-up comedian and writer, so my choices were limited basically to manual labor or your next delivery person. I followed my first instinct and went online to request an interview to be an Amazon driver. I'm used to working alone, and from what I've seen in the recent pandemic-riddled Amazon delivery-crazed era, apparently some of the hottest young men are in the field of package delivery. So that would be a bonus, I assumed. The night before my interview, riddled with a fear of becoming complacent in a 9-to-5 job, I knew I couldn't fold just quite yet. I had to at least make an attempt to stay in the field of my passion. I'm a stand-up comedian first, but I do have a background in acting as well. I attended the American Academy of Dramatic Arts straight out of high school in hopes of becoming a Broadway actor. At 22, I moved to New York City to pursue this dream. After a few small roles in off-Broadway shows, it became frustratingly clear that my nervous system had a mind of its own. I could feel completely comfortable in my mind, then step on stage to a quite different scenario. After one incident where I was in the middle of a play and actually suffered paralysis in my right arm due to a panic attack, my hand clenched up and unable to move, I decided I needed help. I refused to allow it to deter me from my pursuit to entertain, so I decided improv classes could definitely be a solution to get me out of my shell. Some people would say therapy, but I've never had a good experience within that field. So for 3 years I took improv classes, at one point even pretending to be a pickle. I eventually did stand-up as a dare. I was nervous, but the great thing about stand-up is that you can use any emotion or uncomfortability and make jokes about it. Because, as I have learned in my many years of standing alone on stage with just a microphone, bearing my soul, the general public loves to see others suffering just as much as they secretly are. Are we all just assholes at our core? Sorry, I'm reading this for the first time in a while too. After 18 years of doing stand-up, I am now still most comfortable on a stage. I will go on a commercial audition and shake nervously with fear, then 3 hours later be in front of 300 people and have no problem talking about the fact that after the age of 40, my vagina now appears to be a few shades darker brown than the rest of my skin. Am I cooking bananas down there? I am now at the age where I wake up most mornings in fear of my financial future, but apparently it is not enough to make me quit. I mean, I'm gonna die anyway, no matter what, right? I've witnessed successful comedians that I admired and envied either slowly kill themselves with drugs or just outright aggressively take their own life. So who am I to give up? Man, there's a typo right in the middle of the book. Oh well, at least you know it wasn't made by AI. I'm at least still loving my shows, even if a majority of them are in a bar or restaurant where the patrons were not expecting the Dodger game to be turned off for a night of comedy. Surprise! They hate that. I've had my share of close family members try and sway me off this path. Just 6 months ago, my dad sat me down for a serious chat about my future and his fear of how I would support myself. Using, in his own exact words, "Jen, you just don't see that many old female comedians out there." Luckily, I've never in my life been physically punched in the stomach, but this was a verbal knockout punch I can still feel to this day. Fortunately, having grown up in the midst of the Rocky saga, it only made me stronger and more motivated. I guess every so often we all need an Ivan Drago in our life. I also get that as a parent, that is a normal fear to have for your child. No disrespect to Daddy. I am definitely not withholding of my mental struggles. I have been doing background work for a year now, and being someone very prone to depression, I have learned to constantly search for the positive in a situation. It's not always easy to do, and several of my peers that I started doing stand-up comedy with are now the stars of the show that I am doing the background work on. That's not an exaggeration. I used to hide, hoping they wouldn't see me. The shame and discomfort I felt was overwhelming and paralyzing. Fortunately, I've been blessed with enough introspective resources to realize the strength of ego. I now walk up to everyone I know and say hello. I sometimes get a look of pity from my peers. One of them actually asked me what happened because I had so much potential. I just smile and say, I'm still alive. The older I get, the more I realize that actually may be the greatest success in LA. This article is not meant as a way to complain about my position in life. No matter what mediocre job or lifestyle I find myself in, I know I am still living in a fashion that is better than probably 90% of other human beings on this earth. But I know now that it doesn't necessarily matter what degree or career success we may have at the moment. It can all change tomorrow. And what matters is a continued belief in myself. I know how talented I am. If that talent gets hindered by bad networking skills, or a physically paralyzing panic attack, so be it. I'll continue to work through it and try my hardest to rise above the fear. But until then, I'll enjoy the amazing LA days working on television and movie sets at awesome locations like Warner Brothers and Sony Studios, being side by side with actors I have looked up to for years and making the most of this beautiful life I have, even if at this moment in time, I am just quietly living in the background. That was chapter 1. Okay. I hope you continue to watch for the next 47 chapters that are to come.